Hi, I'm Jenny. I talk about random things that pop into my head. And so if you've come back, well, welcome. If you're new, welcome. I'm going to talk today about Robert Kennedy's talking about the autism problem that we have here in the United States and the research that they want to do to find a cause. And also talk about some things I saw in the media and some personal experience that I have with both autism and mental disabilities. And so you don't have to agree with what I feel. That's fine. If you want to make a comment in the comment section below, just please remember to keep it polite and civil. So just to recap what he was saying is that they want to find the cause. They're saying by September. Now, I don't know how they're going to do that, but they want to find the root cause of what is causing this uprise in autism in our country. And he said that it seemed to start back in 1989. So maybe, I know that when we first started noticing that there were more and more kids diagnosed with autism, that they were blaming it on vaccines, specifically the MMR vaccine. Now they're saying that they don't think it was that. I don't know. It could be, it might not be. I don't know. But he says that it has to be something environmental because these kids are born as normal children. Which I believe is true. Everybody I know that has had a child that was been diagnosed with autism has said the same thing. This child was born fine. Something happened and it changed. And so as far as my experience, my granddaughter, her name is Melody. She is going to be 12 in May. And she's on the spectrum. Now, he did say some things about I think he worded it badly because in extreme cases, there are children who become adults who never actually function on any kind of a level where they would be able to maintain an independent life. Okay. But that spectrum is very broad. So in the case of like Melody, if you met her today, you would be able to have a conversation with her. She could talk to you about things that she likes. She may seem a little distant to you, like she's not paying attention, but she is, okay? But you can still have a conversation with her. Whereas I have met children that do not talk at all. Okay. And when he talked about the toe walking, I used to have a customer who, one of their children had autism, and he was a toe walker. So there are children who can become functioning adults with autism. The thing that's bothering me about this whole thing is the media presentation talking about the backlash of it. Okay. And here's where the problem lies. The news clips that I've seen didn't have autistic people in it. They had people who were mentally disabled. And mentally disabled or intellectually disabled people are not the same as autistic people. There's a completely different. It's completely different. It's not the same. So an autistic person, you can also refer to them as like neurodivergent. They were born normal, something happened, and they have a neurological divergence. But their intellect is not necessarily affected by it. As a matter of fact, some of these people are very, very intelligent. Whereas a person who is suffering from an intellectual disability has either had some sort of brain trauma or genetic disorder, which brings me to my sister-in-law, Amy. Amy has Down syndrome, and actually one of the people that they represented in this news clip as the follow-up was actually a person with Down syndrome. Now, Down syndrome is a physical thing. It's not just in the brain. It's a physical thing. You know somebody has Down syndrome when you see them. They have characteristics that are very similar to each other. And Amy's one of them. And within Amy, well, not within Amy's case, but her type, we don't know why Amy has Down syndrome. We don't know what it is. We do know it's a genetic disorder. So when I was pregnant with Valerie, my youngest one, back then they did the alpha fetal protein test on me, and it came back low, which is a marker for the potential for Down syndrome, and there's already somebody in the family that has it. So when I was pregnant with her, we went to the University of Maryland. I went through 2 hours of genetic testing. They explained every kind of Down syndrome there is, because there's actually different kinds, and they showed us, how the pictures of the chromosomes are. There's an extra chromosome with Down syndrome. Okay, and so then I had amniocentesis with her, and she was fine. She didn't have it. I don't know why the test came back the way that it is. But there is a potential in my children, through their father's side, that they could have a child somewhere along the line that has Down syndrome, because we don't know why Amy has it. Now, because of her disability, she was involved in a lot of other people in her community. With her education, she went to a special school for children who were intellectually disabled, and she was in a program, they called it MARC, which was the Montgomery County Association of Retarded Citizens. And we don't say retarded anymore. That's not very nice. It's not acceptable, but that's what the name of that organization was, because it was founded back before that word was considered derogatory. And so she was able to get a job. They were very menial tasks, like folding napkins or sorting silverware, those kinds of things. But she will never, ever be able to live on her own. She can't handle money. She doesn't know how to count money. I think she can count to 5. But she's also a very bubbly personality. She's got a memory like an elephant. She loves music. She loves to play air guitar. She dances. And I got to talk to her the other day. She sounded okay to me. But that brings me to the other part of people in general, whether you're neurodivergent or intellectually disabled, or you're an everyday person, you have no other kinds of problems. All of these people can have mental health issues. Melody recently went through an episode where she was, I think it was depression. She was having some problems with depression on top of her other issues that she has. Amy, who is now becoming older, is actually starting to suffer from early onset dementia. Now, I don't know how you diagnose that in somebody who's got an intellectual disability. I don't know. She sounded fine to me on the phone the other day. I talked to her. She knew who I was. So I don't know how bad that is yet, because I haven't seen her in a long time, but I did get to talk to her. I don't know. But, she's also got the ability of being depressed or anxious or whatever other kinds of things that fall under the mental health issues, just like you and me and anybody else. But I'm just bringing this out because, first of all, there is a rise, whether it's because we can diagnose it now, we have better ways of diagnosis, or whether it actually is something environmental that's affecting our children who are growing into adults or not. And to know the difference between somebody who is divergent versus having an intellectual disability, and also understanding that within both of these diagnoses, there is a broad range of disabilities. So somebody who's divergent may never actually be able to be potty trained, versus somebody who is extremely intelligent and just communicates differently. And the same thing with intellectual disabilities. There are children, probably less so, I don't know, I haven't seen this in a long time, but I remember growing up that there were children who were wheelchair bound and were really just had the intellect of a baby. They wore diapers. They were nonverbal. If something was bothering them, they cried just like a baby would. Versus somebody like Amy, who is never going to be able to live independently, but she did have small jobs, and she had a pretty good life, really. And the other thing, he did mention that these things destroy families. Now, in my case, my in-laws stayed together. They never separated. They never divorced. Amy was treated very well, and she lived with them until my in-laws got to the point where they were no longer able to take care of her because of their age. And then she became a ward of the state. Now, that did not mean that they had no contact with her. It just meant that she didn't live in their house anymore. She lived in housing situations where she had a caregiver. But she still was very involved with their family, or the family was still very involved, and they still are to this day. But, my my father-in-law is deceased, but my mother-in-law, she can't drive anymore. She's losing her vision. She cannot take care of somebody the way she used to be able to. So that's why. And it's for her best interests, not because they didn't want her. And so the same thing with in my case, when I had my amniocentesis, my doctor asked me what was I going to do if I had a diagnosis of a child who would have a disability. And I was about 4 months pregnant at the time, so that gave me another 5 months. And what I told him was, I told him about Amy and that the impact that she had on other people. And so her life had value, and that I would use that time to educate myself and prepare myself and try to figure out what I would need to do as a parent to take care of a child that had special needs. And then I want you to keep in mind, I guess there are some people who just can't handle the responsibility of a child who has more needs, but it's not. There are a lot of people who have children with different needs that aren't necessarily mental problems, I'll say, or neurological problems. There are children who, have other kinds of injuries and may never walk, or may never be able to do sports, or, other things. I have a friend, her child has cerebral palsy, so he can't walk, but there's nothing wrong with him intellectually. But they have to have wheelchairs, and they have to have special things in their bathroom so that he can access the tub and the toilet and, whatever he needs. And their car has to be set up a certain way so that, he can ride in the car. But, this is part of being a family. And I saw a comment by somebody who says that they were autistic, and it's not the autism that destroys families. It's the people that destroy families. And I thought that was such a poignant remark, because the truth of the matter is everybody's got problems. Some are more severe than others. And, I know people that have left their spouse because they got fat, or because their husband started to lose his hair. People, they're right. People destroy families. But I can also say that in Amy's case, she brought a certain level of compassion to that family that I don't think would have been there had she not been born. That's what I think. And with Melody, my granddaughter, sorry. Same thing. She can, she likes to be with her cousins and play with them. And, we were at a family reunion. Everybody had a great time. But at the end of the day, the younger grandkids were pretty sugared up and bouncing off the walls. They were in a hotel room by this point. And Melody, who's a little bit older, was tired. And the commotion was too much for her. So she had to go somewhere by herself where there just wasn't so much noise going on. But I, I do believe that we need to figure out what it is that's causing this so that we can do something to correct it, whatever it might be. And I also think that we need to be aware, first of all, that it's not the same as an intellectual disability. It is completely different. And that there is a broad spectrum, and regardless of where they fall, whether it's under this autism or intellectual disability, these are still individual people, and each person is just as individual as the person who's being treated for any other kind of disorder or illness. And we need to treat them as individual people, not in just their diagnosis and their medical needs, but also the way we interact with them as people, because they hold value. And in the end, why can't we figure out what it is that causes these problems? And by the way, I just want to also just throw this in there because in my experience, is specific to Down syndrome, but there's many reasons why somebody may have an intellectual disability. Sometimes we know what it is and sometimes we don't. And like I was saying, she went to school with people who were intellectually disabled, but not all of them have Down syndrome. I know one of her good friends, she became intellectually disabled because she had meningitis as a baby. But brain trauma can happen. Maybe the mother did something. That's a terrible way to say it. Mom may have ingested or taken drugs or taken something that caused a problem. Not blaming. I'm not blaming, okay? I'm just saying she may not have even known she was pregnant and did something that caused her baby to be born that way. And then something else could have happened after the baby was born that caused an intellectual disability. I'm not blaming anybody for anything. I'm just, we know now, for instance, that alcohol consumption during pregnancy can cause problems with children. So we tell moms not to drink alcohol when they're pregnant. And we know that certain drugs can also cause problems, or like illegal drugs and things like that. So I'm not really, I don't want to blame anybody for something because you may not know, okay? But we do know that things can cause problems that while moms do, whether it was negligent or whether it was by accident while they were pregnant. So and there's probably more. It's a complex issue with no definitive answer, and that's why I'm saying that we have some knowledge, but we do not have all the knowledge. And I think that really the problem with the way that he said it, not what he said, but the way that it was said, because he didn't encompass all of the people. He was talking about the most extreme cases, and we need to keep that in mind, that it's not just the extreme cases. It's everybody on that spectrum, whether it's very severe or very mild. They still deserve to know why they're like this, or why our children are like this, what we can do to prevent it, and what we can do to help the people that we have in our community right now who have these issues. That's my point. Okay? So I hope that in this case that some of the things that I have to say today are helpful, because I feel like this was very, what's the word? Just put in a pocket, for one thing, but also the people who are reporting on what he said are not looking at the whole picture and not really representing this part of our society accurately. Okay? Y'all have a good one, and I will talk to you again soon.